They laughed at her for being too old, too slow. But when a brand-new Mercedes S-Class belonging to a powerful Texas CEO died in the middle of the road, with millions of dollars on the line, no one else could solve the mystery. In San Antonio, the Iron Star Garage was a place of buzzing tablets and flashy young mechanics, yet hidden in the corner was Evelyn Hart, 67, her grey hair tied back, her hands steady as stone. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't quick. But she had something the others didn't: the patience to listen, the instinct to see what scanners could not. And when the clock began bleeding away the final hours before a deal that could change everything, it was the very woman they wanted gone who stepped forward. By 10 in the morning, the Texas heat had already turned the air into a slow, shimmering veil. Iron Star Garage breathed like a living thing. Compressors coughing, impact wrenches barking, a radio murmuring old country through static. A line of cars waited beneath the sun-bleached awning, their hoods propped like open mouths. The place had a clean, modern gloss, digital check-in kiosk at the door, wall-mounted tablets blinking with work orders, fresh epoxy floors that smelled faintly of lemon. And then there was Eve. Evelyn Hart, kept to the far bay, where the shade held a little longer. 67, hair the silver of new solder, she wore a navy shop shirt that had faded to the memory of blue. Her hands were calm, slow, the way a surgeon's hands are in the second hour of a delicate operation. A multimeter hung from her pocket, the leads clipped neatly together like a habit. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, it came low and certain, like a line drawn with a carpenter's pencil. "Eve, you need me to log your notes again?" Brooke called, breezing by with a tablet tucked under her arm. 26, cherry gloss on her nails. She moved with the kind of confidence that made customers trust the upsell. "We've got the new interface, super fast." "I'll write them," Eve said without looking up. "Paper still works when the Wi-Fi doesn't." Brooke smirked. "The Wi-Fi doesn't break here." From the office, Mark stepped out, sunglasses hooked into the collar of his polo. He was 35, a former high school quarterback whose shoulders still entered rooms before he did. "Team meeting at noon," he announced, clapping once. "Let's keep the bays humming. Tyler, Sentra on Bay 2 is yours. Check engine, intermittent stall. Customer's got a long drive to Dallas tonight, says it's possessed." Tyler spun a ratchet showily and grinned. 28, a sleeve of work-in-progress tattoos, vanishing under his cuff. He loved cars for the stories they gave him later at bars. "Possessed. Dude, it's Nissan. That's just the transmission telling you it hates life." Eve had heard the Sentra arrive. She had heard the rough cough at idle, the hiccup in the exhaust like a skipped heartbeat. She had also heard the faint rattle, thin, high, mistimed, when the car rolled across the threshold. She set down her wrench and wiped her hands on a cloth, already patterned with years of engines. Tyler plugged in the scan tool. Brooke hovered, tapping notes. The tablet painted the screen in clean lines and green checks. "No codes," Tyler said. "Told you. Probably the CVT slipping. It's a Nissan thing." Mark leaned in. "If it's transmission, quote the rebuild and the rental. Let's show we're thorough." Eve's eyes rested on the car the way some people rest eyes on a sleeping child. "Tell him he'll be late to Dallas if you rebuild what isn't broken," she said softly. Tyler looked over his shoulder. "You hear that, Mark? The Oracle has spoken." Brooke gave a polite laugh. Mark didn't. "Eve, we're good," he said, soothing but final. "Let the kids run the play." Eve didn't argue. She pulled a stool over and set the Sentra's service manual on her lap. Not the glossy PDF everyone else used, but a dog-eared printout with tabs in colors that had faded like old jelly beans. A moment later she reached into her pocket and lifted the multimeter, turning the dial by feel. Bay 2 turned surgical, battery disconnected, intake piping off, transmission pan out. Tyler narrated for Brooke's documentation, the words he liked: tear down, contamination risk, catastrophic wear, filling the air like confetti. The clock ticked. The heat thickened. Sweat laid a clean line down Mark's temple. 2 hours became 3. "Still no smoking gun," Tyler said finally, peering into the transmission guts as if the answer might wink back. "Fluid's not perfect, but not death either." "Customers calling again," Brooke said, "leaving in, 3 hours." Eve set the manual aside and slipped past them, light as a thought. She leaned into the cabin, turned the key, and let the car come alive for a moment. She closed her eyes. The engine idled, steady, but the tack needle quivered, a whisper of doubt. She clicked the hazard lights on and off, listening. She turned the AC to max. The idle wobbled like a table with one short leg. She killed the engine and popped the hood. With the multimeter's black lead clipped to ground, she probed the harness at the top of the transmission, her hand steady despite the heat. "Give me that wiring diagram," she said. Brooke hesitated, then handed over the tablet. Eve didn't need the picture, not really. She wanted the part number. "Vehicle speed sensor," Eve murmured, sliding under the front bumper until the concrete cooled her shoulder blades. The harness there had a scar, a stiff bend near the connector where someone had once yanked instead of pressed a tab. She pressed her finger against the insulation and felt the wire give the smallest click, a telltale of copper broken inside its plastic skin. "Tyler," she called from the floor, voice as mild as weather. "Put the transmission back together, then wiggle this. Slow. With the engine on." He frowned but did it, annoyance tightening his jaw. When the engine lit, it settled into a calm idle. Eve reached up and nudged the harness a hair. The idle stumbled so fast the engine almost died before catching itself. Brooke's brows lifted. "Wait, what?" Eve nodded once. "Only stalls when the harness shifts. A broken strand. The sensor hiccups on load. The ECU panics. Timing goes weird. Car thinks it's flying or asleep or both. You could rebuild the transmission all day and never fix that hiccup." Tyler went quiet. He jiggled again. The engine did its small collapse and rescue act on cue, like a trick dog that hadn't been fed. Mark exhaled through his nose. For a heartbeat, he looked 12, a kid being taught to tie his cleats by an uncle who had tied more laces than he had thrown passes. "Can you fix it fast?" he asked. "Fast enough," Eve said. She stripped the brittle inch of insulation with care, found the place where the copper had fatigued to powder, soldered in a short, clean piece, and slid heat shrink over the joint until it hugged the wire like new skin. She rerouted the harness so it no longer strained against its own shape. Then she clicked the connector in and out twice, just to feel the spring return. Outside, the heat kept thickening, as if the day itself wanted to see how far people could bend. Inside the bay, the Sentra idled like a cat now asleep in sun. Tyler revved, then dropped it into gear. No dip. He turned the wheel full lock with the AC blasting, no quiver. Brooke watched the tack needle as if it might try another trick. It didn't. She brought a hand to her mouth, then took it away. "You just listen to it," she said. "I listened to what the scanner couldn't hear," Eve answered, wiping the soldering iron's tip clean. "Scanners tell you what's recorded, not what's about to fail." Tyler set the scan tool down carefully. The bravado snipped off him for a moment. "Okay," he said. Not quite a whisper, not quite a laugh. "Okay." Mark calculated quickly, the refund he wouldn't have to issue, the good review that might come, the time saved by not chasing ghosts. He looked at Eve with a face he saved for customers and bankers. "Thanks," he said. "Good catch." Eve nodded. She didn't need the thanks. She needed the quiet click of a connector that would stay connected, the clean line of a wire now routed sanely. She needed the small, private proof that paying attention still had currency. The customer picked up the Sentra before lunch. He shook Mark's hand, then Eve's, then Mark's again, as if trying to reconcile who had done what. When he drove away, smooth as wet glass, the garage let out a breath. They didn't talk about humiliation or age. They didn't apologize. But the bay next to Eve's stayed open a beat longer than usual that afternoon, as if the garage itself had made space for her shadow. Later, when the sun stretched the bay doors into bright rectangles and the radio had given up to static, Brooke wandered to Eve's corner with 2 paper cups of iced tea sweating rings on their lids. She set one on Eve's bench without ceremony. "You always carry that meter?" she asked. "Longer than you've been alive," Eve said. It wasn't a boast. It was a date stamp. Brooke leaned on the fender of a dusty pickup, the kind of lean that says, "I'm not leaving yet." "I read we're supposed to trust the data," she said. "But sometimes the data is just the part that's easy to collect." Eve smiled a small, surprised smile. "Sometimes," she said, "and sometimes it's exactly what you need. The trick is knowing which is which." From the office, Mark's voice floated out. "Heads up! VIP towing in before close. Everyone on deck." Tyler rolled his shoulders as if putting armor back on. "Time to shine," he said, glancing at Eve. He didn't wink. He didn't smirk. He just looked, a new line of respect penciled in where sarcasm had been. Eve picked up her meter, slipped it into her pocket, and stood. Quiet thunder gathered behind her eyes, the kind that rattles glass somewhere far off before the storm arrives. "Let's see what's next," she said. The tow truck rumbled in like a tired bull, air brakes hissing, steel ramp clanging as it lowered. The driver hopped out and waved toward the gleaming silver Mercedes S-Class perched on the flatbed. Even half asleep from the heat, the car looked like money. Fresh wax, spotless rims, privacy glass catching the sun like black mirrors. Yet the silence was wrong. No low hum, no electronic pulse, just a cold machine that should have been alive. Mark came out of the office fast, polo shirt sticking to his back. He already knew. The call had been short. "CEO Graham Whittaker, car down, needs it in 6 hours. A man who owned 3 buildings downtown, whose name was on half the construction projects in San Antonio, whose face had been on the front page when he donated a wing to the children's hospital. If his car wasn't fixed before the meeting with Japanese investors that evening, the story wouldn't be about generosity anymore. It would be about failure, weakness. Tyler whistled low when he read the name on the work order. "You serious? This guy's net worth has commas in it." Brooke checked the time on her tablet. "Meeting's at 6. It's noon now. If he doesn't show up rolling smooth, that deal could walk. We're the 4th shop he's tried today." The Mercedes slid off the ramp with a sigh of tired hydraulics. Its hood gleamed like polished armor. Graham Whittaker himself stepped from a black SUV behind it, suit jacket draped over his arm, white shirt sleeves rolled up. Mid-50s, square jaw, the kind of presence that made silence gather. He scanned the garage the way investors scan balance sheets, looking for what's weak, what's wasted. "Mr. Whittaker," Mark said, hand extended. His voice carried polish, but his eyes carried nerves. "We'll make this right. You'll be on the road in no time." Graham's handshake was brief, perfunctory. "I've heard that 3 times today," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, like the flat water just before a storm. "None of them were right." Tyler jumped in, eager. "Don't worry, sir. We've got the latest scanners updated last week. We'll pinpoint it." Brooke nodded, tapping the tablet awake. "We'll log everything, keep you updated in real time." Graham's eyes flicked past them to Eve, who had wiped her hands on a cloth and stood quietly in her bay. She didn't look away. She didn't smile either, just met his gaze with the patience of someone who had watched hundreds of men like him step into garages thinking time and money bent the laws of mechanics. His brow twitched, then he turned back to Mark. "You have 6 hours. Graham said flatly. "After that, I take my car and I don't come back." Mark swallowed. Understood. The moment the office door closed behind Graham, the scramble began. Tyler slid into the driver's seat, started the car, only for it to shudder alive for 3 seconds, then die. He frowned, restarted. Same thing. Brooke shoved the scanner cable in, watched numbers cascade, then freeze. "No fault codes," she said. "Nothing stored, nothing pending." Tyler threw his hands up. "Great, it's a ghost. You can't fix what doesn't admit it's broken." Mark paced. His phone buzzed, probably updates from Graham's assistant, or worse, reporters sniffing around. "Figure it out," he snapped. "This shop's reputation is on the line." Hours shrank. Tyler stripped panels. Brooke refreshed databases. Mark barked updates. The garage filled with the smell of coolant and stress. Every failed attempt echoed against the new epoxy floor, and Eve watched. Not judging, not gloating, just watching the way a hawk watches a field. She saw the way heat shimmered around the hood, even when the engine wasn't running. She noticed how the car only died after a short run, not instantly. She heard the faintest tick, a relay clicking when it shouldn't, every time the system cut off. Finally, Tyler leaned back against the workbench, sweat streaking his neck. "We've checked everything, ignition, fuel, ECU, all clean. Nothing's wrong, but the thing won't stay alive." Mark slammed his palm against the bench. "That's not good enough. We've got 3 hours left." Brooke bit her lip. "What if it's something in the software, a glitch?" 3 premium shops said the same, Eve said quietly, stepping forward at last. "If software was the problem, updates would have fixed it." Tyler barked a laugh. "Oh, so you've got the magic answer now. Let me guess, your meter's gonna tell us what 3 shops and the latest tech couldn't." Eve didn't rise to the bait. She walked slowly around the Mercedes, her hand trailing just above the surface, as if reading Braille written in heat. She paused near the front wheel well, crouched, and looked into the tight space behind the bumper. "Something's cooking where it shouldn't," she murmured. Brooke frowned. "Cooking?" Eve stood, brushing dust from her knees. "I'll need a heat gun and about 15 minutes, and the car running." Mark hesitated. Every second spent was another nail in the coffin if she was wrong. "Eve, or," she said calmly, "you can keep chasing clean scans until he walks out that door." The garage fell silent. Even Tyler's smirk faded. Mark looked at the clock. Less than 3 hours. He rubbed his face, then waved a hand. "Fine, you've got 15. Eve nodded once. "That's all I'll need." She opened the hood, eyes steady, the weight of the deadline pressing as heavy as the Texas heat, and somewhere in the corner of the office, Graham's gaze followed her through the glass, watching the woman everyone else had nearly ignored step into the storm. The Mercedes came alive again, smooth as silk for a few seconds before faltering, coughing, and dying. Eve had the hood up, sleeves rolled to her elbows, grey hair sticking to her temples. She was quiet, not the quiet of defeat, but of concentration, like a chess player already mapping 10 moves ahead. Brooke held the heat gun uncertainly. "Where do you want it?" "On my word," Eve said. She leaned close to the labyrinth of wires and sensors, her eyes narrowing. "Run the engine." "Let it breathe first," Tyler muttered, but turned the key. The car purred, too perfect, too clean, like it wanted to hide the truth. Eve guided Brooke. "Now, here, slow, right near the sensor harness. Don't overdo it." The heat gun whirred, air rushing hot. The Mercedes idled steady. Then at a flicker of warmth, the whole system cut. Silence. Brooke gasped. It just died." "Again," Eve ordered. Tyler restarted. Eve pointed to another angle. Brooke's hand trembled as she guided the flow. Seconds later, the engine collapsed like a fainting giant. Eve straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. "There," she said softly. "Sensor's not bad. It's placement. Too close to the exhaust flow. When it heats, it triggers protection. Kills the system to save itself." Tyler blinked. "That's it? Some stupid placement?" Eve's voice was calm, firm. "A billion-dollar car taken down by a 1-inch mistake." She touched the bracket. "I've seen this in European bulletins. Rare. Invisible if you don't listen to the pattern." Mark leaned in, incredulous. "You're telling me all these shops missed it because they trusted the scanner?" Yes, she gave a faint smile. Scanners only know what they're told. They don't know what's hiding in plain sight. Through the glass, Graham Whittaker rose from his chair. He stepped out of the office, jacket still slung over his arm, eyes fixed on Eve. "Can you fix it?" he asked. Eve didn't flinch. "Relocate the sensor. Shield it from exhaust heat. Test under load. If it holds an hour, it'll hold tonight." Mark hesitated. This was no quick button click. If she was wrong, they'd waste precious time. But Graham's gaze cut through him, and Mark nodded. "Do it." Eve set to work with practiced precision. Tyler fetched tools without a word, the usual swagger gone. Brooke logged each step, her voice steadier now, as though narrating history. Eve fabricated a simple bracket, rerouted wiring, and locked the sensor into its new home away from the heat. She checked every clip twice, every tie snug. Finally, she nodded. "Start it!" The Mercedes roared to life. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Eve kept the hood open, heat gun aimed, pushing the system hard, still steady. At 30 minutes, she closed the hood with a click. "It's fixed," she said. Tyler let out a low whistle, part admiration, part disbelief. Brooke's eyes shone. Mark's chest lifted with the relief of a man saved from drowning, but Graham Whittaker stepped closer, studying her face. "How did you see it?" Eve met his gaze evenly. "Because I don't just look at data. I listen. Machines talk, if you're patient enough." For the first time all day, Graham smiled, a quick, rare crack in stone. "You save more than a car. You save my deal. Name your price." The garage went still. Tyler's mouth half opened, Brooke's eyes wide, Mark stiff with anticipation. Eve folded her arms. "I don't want money, I want training. These young mechanics teach me the newest tech, and I'll teach them what no scanner can hear. Deal?" Graham's smile deepened. "Done." He extended a hand. Eve shook it, her grip firm, grease still on her fingers. He didn't mind. Behind them, the Mercedes idled steady as if mocking the chaos it had caused. The deal was saved. But something larger had just shifted inside Iron Star Garage. The unspoken admission that the woman they had nearly written off was the bridge between old wisdom and new machines. The Mercedes glided out of Bay 2 like a prize fighter who had taken a punch, steadied himself, and walked away stronger. Its idle was smooth, its system steady. For the first time all afternoon, the garage exhaled. Tyler leaned against the workbench, wiping his forehead with the back of his arm. "I'll be damned," he muttered. His tone wasn't mocking now, it was low, reverent, like someone talking about a ghost they'd just seen. Brooke tapped her tablet, but wasn't typing. She just stared at Eve, eyes wide, as if seeing her for the first time. You didn't even hesitate," she said. "It's like you already knew." "I didn't know," Eve replied, coiling the soldering iron cord with care. "I listened. That's different." The office door swung open. Graham Whittaker strode back inside, phone pressed to his ear. His voice carried the crisp confidence of a man who had just secured victory. "Yes, the meeting's on. No delays. Tell Tokyo we'll be ready." He hung up, his gaze settling on Eve. He crossed the shop floor, ignoring Mark's expectant posture, ignoring the new epoxy gleam, ignoring everything except the woman still wiping grease from her hands. "Ms. Hart," he said, voice firm, "you saved my evening, maybe my company's future. I asked what you wanted, and you gave me an answer no one else ever has." Mark cleared his throat, stepping forward. "We're grateful too, Mr. Whittaker, really. The whole team." But Graham raised a hand, not to silence, but to pause. His eyes never left Eve. "Iron Star Garage should know what it has." Eve tilted her head. "They do," she said softly. "They just forget sometimes." The silence that followed was heavier than a torque wrench. Tyler looked away. Brooke pressed her lips together. Mark's jaw tightened, but his eyes gave him away, somewhere between shame and realization. "Eve." Mark started, his voice rougher than he intended. I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have doubted you, or brushed you off. Eve's hand stopped moving, the rag still between her fingers. She looked at him, really looked, until Mark shifted under the weight of it. Apologies are cheap, she said finally. Respect is earned. But if you mean it, then let's do better. Tyler pushed off the bench, the cocky grin gone. Look, I gave you hell too, called you Oracle like it was a joke. But hell, you caught something I never would have seen. That was... He shook his head, almost laughing at himself. That was badass. Brooke stepped closer. If you'll actually teach us, I want in. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, shoulders heavy. Eve, I don't just want you as a tech here. I want you leading, Director of Technical Operations. Officially. You set the tone, you build the bridge. I'll back it. The words hung in the air, almost unreal. Eve studied him, the man who was both her nephew and her boss, who had tried to keep her in the shadows while he polished the shop's image. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded once, firm. If I take it, it's on my terms. Mutual training. No ego, no shortcuts. We combine the old and the new. Mark exhaled, a slow release of pride and relief tangled together. Deal. Graham smiled faintly, as though amused to witness something larger than his car being repaired. Looks like you've got your house in order, he said. I'll spread the word. People need to know there's still a place where machines are heard, not just scanned. Eve inclined her head. That'll do. The CEO left with his car, the taillights fading down the sun-bleached road. The shop stood in the quiet aftershock, the kind that follows a storm. Brooke broke it first. Director of Technical Operations, she said, grinning. Kinda has a ring to it. Eve folded her rag, tucked it into her back pocket, and finally allowed herself the smallest smile. Don't get too comfortable. Titles don't fix cars. But the way the others looked at her, the way the garage itself seemed to settle, something had changed. She was no longer a relic in the corner. She was the center of the map, the compass pointing forward. And in that moment, under the buzz of fluorescent lights and the lingering scent of solder, the Iron Star garage shifted forever. Morning slid into the bays like a clean sheet. The heat hadn't set its teeth in yet. The epoxy floors still smelled faintly of lemon, and the radio hadn't drifted into static. A handwritten sign appeared on the corkboard beside the digital kiosk, taped at a slight angle in Eve's neat block letters. Wed Fry, 7:30 a.m. Cross-training. Bring questions. Leave ego. Tyler paused to read it, coffee steaming in a paper cup. Leave ego, he said under his breath, smirking at himself. Guess I'm already late. Brooke arrived with a notebook, the spiral spine bent into a nervous S. Mark stood near the office door, not in a polo today, but in a dark shop shirt like everyone else. It wasn't a costume. It looked like a decision. Eve was waiting at Bay 3 with a whiteboard that had done time in a forgotten conference room. She tapped the marker against the frame. 2 tracks, she said. You teach me the new stuff. I teach you the old stuff that's not old. Today, what the scanner can't hear. Friday, Brooke's going to run us through adaptive learn procedures and coding. Tyler lifted a hand. Question. What if I don't know what I don't know? Then you start by admitting it, Eve said, and you listen. She rolled a cart forward. On it sat 3 components. A cracked plastic connector, a clean new one, and a short harness with a section of heat-shrunk repair. She pointed to the cracked piece. This looks like nothing. It's everything. Touch points tell stories. Loose feels different than worn. Worn feels different than wrong. I want each of you to close your eyes and clip and unclip these until you know the difference without seeing it. Brooke blinked. We're doing this by feel? We're building a library in your fingers, Eve said. Scanners give you a library on a screen. You need both. They took turns, eyes closed, the shop going quiet except for the soft click of plastic and the distant breath of a compressor. Tyler's first attempts were rough. He manhandled the tab, rushed the motion. On the 4th try, his hands slowed, almost in spite of him. Huh, he said, surprised. That new one. Springs back. The cracked one feels tired. Eve nodded. Good. Tired is an important word. Machines get tired before they fail. Next, she brought a tray of bolts, all M8, all nearly identical, except each had a slightly different thread pitch or a scar at the start. Match them to their homes without cross-threading, she said. Use the least force you can. Brooke laughed softly. Like a game. Games teach, Eve said, and they make you remember without fear. Mark watched, arms folded, the shop's rhythm shifting around the small class. A delivery van rolled up. A customer asked about pickup times. Life kept tugging, but the bay around Eve held its line, a circle of focus inside a place built for rushing. When the drills ended, Brooke flipped her notebook to a clean page. "Okay, my turn," she said, gathering courage. "We'll do a coding walkthrough on a Ford module, then a VW security access sim. Eve, you drive. I'll spot." Eve sat in the driver's seat of a dusty Fusion, smirking at the role reversal. Brooke's voice went steady, teacher calm. "Connect battery maintainer. Good. Scanner in, select vehicle profile. Perfect. Now we're accessing as-built data. Don't rush the prompts. Read all the options, even the ones we're not using. Because menus hide traps," Eve said, half to herself. "Because menus hide traps," Brooke echoed with a grin. "Exactly." They coded a replacement ABS module, then rehearsed the steps to pair keys on a VW without bricking the immobilizer. Tyler asked blunt questions. Brooke answered 2 and looked to Eve for the third. Eve answered 1 and asked Tyler to explain it back. The circle turned, and nobody fell out. By 9 o'clock, the garage returned to its usual heartbeat, phones, talks, paper cups thumping in trash cans. But a new thread had woven into the pulse. Tyler caught himself listening to an idling Malibu with his head tilted, eyes half closed. Brooke ran her hand along a harness to feel for stiffness before she opened the service manual. Mark answered a customer's question without promising speed he couldn't deliver, and it felt less like losing a sale and more like telling the truth. At lunch, they crowded around a workbench with foil-wrapped tacos and a bottle of green salsa that Tyler swore would fix anything. Eve ate slowly, wiping her hands, the way people eat when they haven't got anything left to prove. Brooke set down her taco and looked at Eve. "How did you learn to hear engines like that?" she asked. "Was it a teacher? A book?" Eve took a sip of water. "A man named Leon," she said. "My first boss. He couldn't read well. People hid that for him, but he listened better than anyone I've ever met. He'd stand beside a car, close his eyes and say, 'It's not the idol, it's what the idol is trying not to do.' He made me close my eyes too." Said sight was impatient. She glanced at the clock. "He also threw wrenches when I rushed." Tyler laughed. "Should we start dodging?" "Not if you stop rushing," Eve said, a smile ghosting the edge of her mouth. The afternoon brought work. A Ram with a parasitic drain, a Civic with ghost ABS lights, and a Suburban whose AC went warm at every stoplight. Eve turned the drain job into a live exercise. "Multimeter on milliamps," she said. "Now, doors closed, hood latch fake shut, modules going to sleep. Notice how the drawer drops in steps? That last step is your clue. Which module hasn't said goodnight?" Tyler squinted at the numbers, then at the fuse chart. "Infotainment," he guessed. "Door module," Brooke countered. Eve lifted a brow at Tyler. "Pop the door card." Inside, a brittle clip rattled loose, a wire's insulation rubbed shiny where it kissed metal. Tyler whistled low. "Tired before it fails," he said, almost proud to hear himself. They fixed the Suburban's AC with a software update that Brooke handled start to finish, narrating each screen so the others would remember the cadence of the harmless-looking boxes that could make or break a job. "Never assume update complete means complete," she said. "Cycle the key, confirm the relearns, drive it, feel it." By closing time, they were sun-tired and stained and somehow lighter. The whiteboard now had a second column, Field Library, new versus cracked connector feel, tired bolts, cross-thread sense, drawdown steps, module sleep map, heat patterns that lie, screen library, as-built discipline, security access timing, update, key cycles, relearn loops. When complete isn't, Mark snapped a photo for the shop Slack. He added a caption he wouldn't have written a week ago. Tools amplify attention. Attention saves hours. As he lowered the bay doors, the street outside burned gold. A group of UTSA engineering students shuffled past in backpacks laughing. One of them stopped, reading the Iron Star logo, then the handwritten sign. "Is this the place with the lady who fixed that CEO's car?" he asked nobody in particular. Brooke, locking the side door, heard him and smiled. "This is the place," she said. The next morning, an email waited in the shop inbox from a professor at the university. Subject line, Site Visit Inquiry, Integrating Sensor Theory with Practical Diagnostics. The body was short, polite, curious, a little excited. Would Iron Star consider hosting a small group to observe a blended methods session? Mark turned the screen so Eve could see. "They want the method," he said. "They want the work," Eve corrected gently. "We'll show them work, not a show." Tyler glanced at the clock. "We doing another morning drill?" "Every Wednesday and Friday," Eve said, already picking up her meter. Then she stopped, thinking, and took a small dog-eared booklet from her bench. She slid it across to Brooke and Tyler. On the cover, in block letters faded by hands, it read, "Notes that don't fit on a screen." "That's Leon's?" Brooke asked, surprised. "It's mine," Eve said, "but he started it. Add to it. Tear out what's wrong. Write what you learn the hard way so the next person doesn't have to bleed for it." Tyler flipped to the last page. It was blank, waiting. He reached for a pen. Brooke did too. Their hands bumped. They laughed. Eve watched them write, the quiet thunder back in her eyes. The garage hummed on, stands lifting, sockets chattering, a kettle boiling somewhere in the office. Out on the street, the day began its heat. Inside, the bridge was being built, one feel, one line of code, one shared page at a time. And somewhere beyond the next job, a future was walking toward Iron Star, the kind where machines weren't just fixed, but understood. Where students came not for a tour, but for a language lesson in metal and light. Eve didn't need to be in front of it, she only needed to make sure there was a way across. She capped her marker, turned to the incoming work order, and smiled to herself. "Let's get to it," she said. "We've got people to teach and cars to hear." By the time autumn crept over San Antonio, Iron Star Garage no longer felt like just another shop tucked off a sun-bleached avenue. Word had spread. Students in UTSA polos walked its bays with notebooks. Customers came not just for repairs, but to see the team that blended new tech with an old heartbeat. The place buzzed different now, as though the air itself carried both voltage and memory. One Friday morning, folding chairs lined the edge of Bay 3. A group of engineering students waited, laptops open, eyes wide. Mark, still wearing his dark shop shirt, welcomed them with the ease of a host who finally believed in his house. Tyler stood nearby, a harness in hand, explaining voltage drops with the same swagger he once reserved for bar stories. Brooke projected live data on the wall, narrating updates with the calm of a professor. And at the center, Eve Hart leaned against the hood of a sedan, multimeter in hand. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. When she spoke, the room settled. "Machines don't hide their truth," she said. "They whisper it. If you trust only the screen, you'll miss the whisper. If you trust only your gut, you'll miss the pattern. Put the two together, and you'll see the whole picture." She clipped the leads, let the numbers climb, then closed her eyes to let the engine's tremor fill her bones. "Hear that stumble? It's not the ignition. It's the ground that's tired. You'll see it in a second." The meter dipped, the students gasped, and Eve smiled. There. Whisper met pattern. Applause rippled, not loud, but sincere. After class, Graham Whitaker himself returned, Mercedes gleaming, handshake firm. He didn't come for a repair this time. He came with a check, not for Eve, but for a scholarship fund under her name, the Evelyn Hart Program for Integrated Diagnostics. Mark read the words aloud, voice catching. Tyler muttered, "badass," under his breath. Brooke wiped her eyes before anyone could see. Eve just shook her head. "If that money puts tools in these kids' hands, I'll take it. Otherwise, I don't need my name on anything." Graham smiled. "Sometimes a name is the tool." As the sun slid low, Eve locked up the bays. The floor smelled of coolant and tacos, the walls of new paint and old effort. She paused at the corkboard. The whiteboard schedule had new columns now. Guest lectures, student labs, shop apprenticeships, a bridge between what was and what could be. Tyler flipped the shop lights one by one. Brooke laughed with a student still lingering. Mark set the alarm code with the calm of a man finally leading, not managing, and Eve stepped out into the Texas dusk, hands streaked with grease, heart steady as an idling engine. The world had tried to put her in the shadows. She'd turned the lights on instead. And just like Evelyn Hart, sometimes the most overlooked person carries the key to the future. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who believes experience still matters. More stories like this are waiting for you here.